So I've had some questions about dealing with forms for the project. So I put together an example of using forms of JavaScript, not necessarily Ajax. Adding code to call get or post and a callback method for Ajax is pretty trivial. I'll show you where to add it. So I have an HTML document with 2 input elements, month and day. And first step in validation is just using HTML validation attributes. So numeric HTML input types allow the usage of min and max as attributes. So I'm specifying that months are numbers from 1 to 12, and days are numbers from 1 to 31. Furthermore, in CSS, I've said the background color of elements that are invalid should be red. So if I have a value, let's refresh, that's invalid, like 33, shows up red. 31 is not showing up red because although February can't have 31 days, some months can, and HTML validation only works within the data of an element. So it can't check, hey, what about this other field? Is it February? It's only about the data in that element. You might have noticed the thing just turned red. I added some JavaScript code to check for the months that have 30 days and the month that has 28 days. There's no leap year code in this. Not necessarily useful for the example. So that code ran when I exited the cell, which fired the change event for that element. So when the day element was changed, that code ran, it checked, it said, hey, 31 is bigger than 28, which is the maximum for the month February. So I am going to set that field as invalid. Here's how you do that. To make the field valid, you call its set custom validity method with an argument of an empty string. Empty string means this is a valid field. There's no invalid message. It's an empty message. It's a good thing. So I set the day element's validity to be good, an empty string, initially every time. Then I'll check the conditions. And if one of the conditions holds, in this case, the month is 2, but the value of the day is greater than 28, I set a custom validity message that isn't an empty string. This makes that field invalid, and hence, because of my CSS code, it turns red. Now, if I click submit, because the field is set invalid, nothing's going to happen. The message that I set is specified so that the user can see, oh, this is why it's not working. This month has only 28 days. Switch to a different month. March does have 31 days, no problem. And so it gets sent to the server. There's no Ajax code here. The server responds with a web page. This web page happens to echo the data it received. Now, if you're not messing with the validity of individual fields, you can still say, look, no matter what, do not submit the form by using the default behavior of the event. So by default, when the submit button of a form is clicked, when the submit event of a form fires, that event eventually is handled by the browser. And the default behavior then is to send the data with an HTTP request to the server and then load a new page into the browser window. I I want that to happen if the data is bad. So I'm going to check to see that what's going on is valid stuff. And if it's invalid, if it's not valid, I call prevent default on the event object itself, which says, don't continue processing this after my function's done running. Don't pass the event on to the next handler and the next handler, and eventually the browser handles it and sends it on its way. I'm saying, stop. Prevent default behavior. I want it to die here. So by setting valid to false, that's going to happen every time now. No matter what, no event will be submitted. So I refresh the page, put in some valid data, and the fields think, oh yeah, that's valid, it's in range, everything's good. But when I click submit, nothing happens because I disabled default behavior. And I'm doing it all the time. Now, if I more reasonably say, hey, I'm assuming all the data is good, it is valid, and then I'll check. And if it happens that after checking I realize, oh, wait a minute, the data is not valid, then I'll set valid to false. Because I'm also changing custom validities, this form wouldn't submit anyway. But if you aren't playing with custom validities, this is a way of suppressing the submission. And now we'll submit normally again. Now, if I was doing AJAX, I probably wouldn't bother with a form submit, though you could. I could just bind to the click event of an arbitrary button. But either way, what I'm going to write is a function that calls getter or post and provides a callback function as well. So I'd have to have two new functions. One that doesn't do much other than marshal the data in the form into a JSON object, and then pass that JSON object to the server using get or post. And then a second function, the callback function, that receives data from the server and displays it or whatever it's going to do. In both cases, if I do use a form and I do bind to the submit event, I do not want default behavior to occur. I'm doing AJAX instead. If I were doing AJAX and I was using the form submit event, I would always call prevent default. I never want a new page to load. I have a single page application here. I want data to come back and get handled by the JavaScript code. So I hope that helps for those of you who asked about forms. Certainly, everyone's project should have a form, or at least form elements. You would need a form, but you would need input elements of some kind. You need data to send to the server so that you can make reasonable AJAX calls. So I will post this video and also the code as it sits here in a new news item in Canvas right now.